Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mitva, where I'm Madhurima, Sappatti, a freedom soul coach who loves to help coaches go from being burnt out to thriving. And we do this by creating a space that works for you, that expands and grows along with you, and allows you to share your message with the world without burnout holding you back. Awesome. Today's topic is so exciting. And if you guys have been watching my previous videos, you know that I'm hyped about it. Like, I'm crazy hyped about it. Okay. Because I did like a week worth of research on this topic and it just made my synapses go blah, 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 blah. I was super excited and I'm excited to share this with you. But before I share today's topic, I have a question for you. Have you ever experienced that moment where a deadline is approaching really fast and you still have a lot of work to do, but as the deadline approaches closer, you sit down and finish a week's worth of work in like an hour or two, and you have done the most productive, most amazing work as efficiently as possible? Has that ever happened to you? I mean, it has happened to me a lot of times in college, I kid you not, because we had so many assignments, you guys. We had so many assignments. But yeah, I mean, it has happened to me, and I have often wondered, what's the entire idea behind stress, right? Because since I was quite young, my relationship with stress has been very negative, in terms of the fact that every time I would get stressed out, I would fall sick. Like, it was like an instant trigger. Me stressing out equals me falling sick. Every time before an exam, I would get a throat infection. It used to get so bad that sometimes I couldn't even talk. I had to take breaks, and it was crazy. I mean, it kind of leads up to the fact that I was meant to be a burnout coach. But still, I mean, stress has been the thing that has caused me to fall sick almost 90% of the time that I've fallen sick. I kid you not. I mean, I'm not exaggerating here. When I was back in my intermediate college, which is basically 11th and 12th here in India, I was a part of a college where they churned out students who would fill out seats in medical and engineering colleges. And they did that by putting a lot of stress on you. There was extreme levels of stress, basically no boundaries. You would be studying from morning to night, irrespective of whether you were at the college or whether you were at home. And it was fast, right? Like, everything was fast. You couldn't breathe. You couldn't like it was crazy. I can't explain it in any other words, because if I do, I'll probably be traumatized all over again. So let's not go into that. But I remember that there was this doctor that was right across the street, basically. And every time I would fall sick, he would take one look at me as soon as I entered his cabin, and he would go, "Oh, you are the girl who studies in that college, right?" "Yeah, it's stress." I was like, "You haven't even heard what's wrong with me." "Yeah, no, it's stress." Whether it was acidity, throat infection, I don't know, like stomach cramps, whatever the hell it was, whenever I used to go up to him and he would be like, "Oh, it's stress." It pissed me off, because I was like, why am I spending money on your fees if every single time you look at me and you go, "Oh, stress"? But I mean, it kind of shows you the kind of relationship I've had with stress. So I never considered stress to be a very positive kind of an emotion or a positive pressure that helps you to succeed. But on the other end, I am someone who works extremely well under stress. Like I mentioned, back in my college days, I would churn out so many amazing projects in the shortest amount of time as soon as the deadline was approaching. So, what's the relationship between stress and productivity? Well, that is today's topic. I wanted to take a deeper dive. I was extremely curious and I went down a rabbit hole for you guys, but also for me. And I'm excited to share it with you today. So, now what we're going to learn today is pretty exciting. It's called the Yerkes-Dodson Law. This law hasn't been scientific, like, it's not a scientific law, but it has been proved by these two amazing human beings called Yerkes and Dodson. We won't get into the nitty gritty of the experiment, but they basically used mice to see if stress helps them get more productive and helps them succeed in their goals, right? Now we have the x-axis and the y-axis. I'll just call this a stress curve, as it is also called, just so that we can get into the main aspect of the game, basically. Now this is an inverted U-shaped curve, and excuse my poor drawing skills. I'm using the whiteboard on Zoom for the very first time, but I'm excited to show this to you guys. So here we go. It's divided into four main regions, okay? and it's so cool. We'll talk about it more in a second, but it goes something like this. Now, let's name this the stress curve, and let's name the y-axis the productivity. I don't know how to turn this around. I'm still learning, but yeah, stay with me, you guys. Stay with me. Stay with me. So the thing about this curve is it's quite easy to understand, but a little bit hard to kind of work on it further, right? But we'll try to break it down as much as possible. Now there are 4 zones, right? The first zone is basically called a bore out, which basically means that when you get extremely bored, right, and you're not able to do anything, your productivity is at an all-time low. This is the region. Now this usually happens because there is not enough motivation, there is not enough stress points that's motivating you to work. And it's quite unique, it's quite an amazing idea to actually think about it, that purpose or having some form of mission in life, having some form of stress basically activates us, right? It makes us go, ooh, this is it, this is it. And this comes because it's hardwired into our DNA. Since the ancient times, we have been working in an area where we were constantly at a risk of something happening. So we were highly active, we had a mission in life, there were multiple stress points. But if you don't have any stress whatsoever, if you don't have any stress factors, you basically get bored, your productivity is at an all-time low. Let's take the example of the college project. Right now, when someone gives you the project right at the beginning, you don't have any stress, there is no motivation, so you're like, I mean, we still have like a month to submit this project, it's not that important, it's not that necessary. And because you don't have any stress, you're also like, work, what the hell, I don't care, let's not do this right now, let's do it at a later point of time. This also happens if you're especially equipped at some sort of a thing and you keep doing the same routine work multiple times. Or if suddenly out of the blue, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but have you ever had like this high stress level thing that happened in your life? Let's say, for example, exams. And then when the holidays come, you're still in this zone of activation, but there's nothing happening. So you get bored. You're like, I want to do something, but I'm bored. I don't know what to do about it. Now that is basically bore out. You have no stress factors that's motivating you to do something, hence your productivity is at an all-time low. Now before I jump into the second region, I just wanted to share, I went down another rabbit hole and tried to understand what bore out means, and it has basically the same symptoms of a burnout, but the causing factors are completely opposite in nature. What causes burnout is high stress level things endured over a longer period of time, whereas in burnout there is no stress. This is also something that a lot of retirees face when when they have to leave work all of a sudden, there's not much happening in your life, you suddenly experience this bore out, and it leads them to depression, anxiety, and all these insomnia. And it's a very weird phase of life to be in, where you want to do something but there is nothing that you can do, so there is nothing motivating you, and there's basically a low productivity level, which therefore then goes on to depress you. But I'm so excited about this, I'll actually make a video on this. Comment bore out down in the comments below if you would like to learn more about this, because I feel that it's an interesting topic and it needs more listening into, it needs more talking into. Now the comfort zone is the second area, right? The second zone of this curve, and it's quite unique, to be honest. If you think about it, it's this place where there is high level of stress, but you're also kind of used to it, so your productivity is, it's there and you don't have to like stress out too much about it. Let's say, for example, if you have been doing something for a pretty long time, let's say writing articles for a pretty long time, out of the blue, if you are asked to produce an article in a short period of time, but it's an article on a topic that you have studied on, you have researched on before and ahead of time, you won't be that stressed out, but you can still finish it. It's your comfort zone. This is the zone that we are normally in. I mean, it's not that stressful, but it's not that productive. It's the kind of place that we exist in most of the times. But what happens at this level? This is the level that we want to be in. Not all the time, but we need to be in this level at least at regular intervals throughout the day. Right now, this place where we are highly productive, it's our productivity is at an all-time peak, and our stress is also at a proper level, right? Like it's not too much, it's not too less, but our productivity is at an all-time peak. Now, this spot right here is something that we call the optimal arousal and optimal performance spot. This is the spot that we were talking about earlier, where we have a deadline that's approaching really quickly, and we produce the most productive work of our life in the most efficient way possible. This happens when you are at an optimal level of stress or arousal and your productivity is at an all-time high. Awesome. This is actually a place that you want to be in regularly, but not throughout the day. So this is the place where you are in the comfort zone, you are doing what you like to do, but you stretch just a little bit, you put just enough pressure to actually finish doing this as soon as possible in the most productive way possible, right? But this is where things start to kind of get a bit spotty. This is the downside curve. Now, you don't necessarily recognize this a lot of times because you start to, because your productivity is still going on, but the stress is kind of increasing and you are kind of trying to deal with the stress as you go about. Now, this is the place where, you know, fatigue starts to come in. You start to have some levels of anxiety. You start to have the negative effects of stress building up on you. But if you don't deal with this aspect as soon as possible, what happens then is you go into burnout. Burnout is when your stress level is at an all-time high, but your productivity is at an all-time low. This is the level that we want to ignore, right? Like we love the comfort zone, we love this spot right here, but we don't want to go any further than that. But how do you actually go about working this, right? Like how can you actually figure out the best way to be in this spot as many times as possible? We start by figuring out, first of all, what are our stress factors, right? Like what causes us stress, what is good stress, and what is bad stress for us, right? We need to have a clear understanding of this. What are the signs? The best way to do this is to understand what are the signs of good stress and the signs of bad stress. We also need to kind of figure out how is the best way possible to go from the comfort zone to the optimal spot that we are speaking about, that's at the peak of this curve, right? And the best way to do this is actually to understand how can we induce good stress points that will motivate us to grow. You need to understand here, the number one thing is that it can't be stress that acts on fear. It needs to be stress that acts on love. A great way for me, if I were to give my own example, is when I used to be in college, exams used to stress the hell out of me. And the best way that I used to deal with it is basically ask my parents that after the exams get over, if I get a particular, if I get marks in a particular range, I would get my favorite book series. If you guys don't know it yet, please know that I am a huge book nerd, and I'm just like, I mean, I love reading and I love writing. So I used to create stress points that used to be something that would make me want to do the things that would push me into this zone of stretch, that would stretch me out of my comfort zone, where I was like, I know things, I am aware of things. Like even if you make me sit down and write the exam, I would still be able to get at least 70 to 80 marks, right? Like out of 100. I knew that I was in that state, but I wanted to raise higher, I wanted to stretch higher, and the best way to do that was to induce good stress points, such as, oh, if I get these many marks, or if I get marks in this range, I would get my favorite book series after I go back home, right? And that used to be the motivation for me to work harder and to be in a higher productivity state, where I was retaining the information, where I was like, yes, this is it. This is what I wanted to remember. And this is what I have to focus on, right? You also need to remember, oh, this is such a good point that just came to me. You also need to remember that once you start to cross this point, the optimal spot, what starts to happen is basically you start having problems with memory, you start to have problems with retention of stuff, right? And this happens because in this comfort zone or in this optimal zone where there's a short term stress happening, our synapses just go crazy and we enter this short term fight or flight mode, and we are constantly working on doing something, right? Our adrenaline is rushing, we are just going all crazy, we want to do the thing that we love to do, or we want to do the thing that we have to do, and our productivity is at an all-time high. But after this point, what starts to happen is the fight or flight response basically goes on for a longer duration than intended by us. And when that happens, we start to face anxiety, we start to face depression, there's fatigue, and this starts to kind of create the spot for burnout to happen, right? So we need to remember, first of all, what are our good stress points, but also seriously, you need to figure out what are some of the signs of bad stress. How do you know if you're going through a bad stress point? What are some of the things that can let you in that, hey, things are not looking good on our end, right? You also need to remember that you need to take regular breaks throughout the day. This is so crucial because you can't be in this spot for a long period of time. You can't be in the optimal spot for a long period of time. You need to go back to the comfort zone and you need to step back. You can't be working throughout the day. Please, guys, you will start to go into this phase and we don't want to be there. We need to be at the highest possible, right? And it's actually good for coaches because we perform our best in a coaching session. But here's the thing, if it's a comfort zone, it's good. If you're stretching a bit and you are in this highly activating container that you have created with your coaching clients, it's amazing. But let's say that you are in this zone throughout the day, or at least for 4 to 5 hours straight, you skip from one coaching container to another. What happens is the stress starts to build because you're putting your entire energy, your entire presence in this container, and it needs you to be active and it needs you to be there, right? Focusing on the person, focusing on the client. And it can't be work. It is not supposed to look like work. It's supposed to look like presence and care, right? But if you do it throughout the day without taking any proper breaks, you start to go into this zone and you'll eventually burn out. No matter how much you want to be present for your clients, you won't be present for your clients because you'll be exhausted. A lot of negativity will start to happen that is often induced by the stress that we are talking about. So take regular breaks. It's extremely crucial. And the last thing is to actually just communicate with yourself, right? This is so amazing because a lot of times we remember that communication is key, but we forget to communicate with our own self. You won't understand, you won't know if you are working at a high level, if you are going into the stress response, which then will lead you to burnout, or if you are in the comfort zone or optimal spot, if you don't communicate with yourself, right? Coaching is all about communicating. You guys know it best. You guys know it best. So I invite you to actually communicate with yourself and figure out which spot you are in. Now that brings us to the end of this video, but I just wanted to let you guys know you don't have to do this alone. I know how stressful it can be. I know how overwhelming it can be. That's what happens when we are going through burnout. We are under a lot of stress and it gets very overwhelming and we can't necessarily handle all the things that's being thrown at us, and we are just like shut down. We just shut down, right? There's nothing that happens after that point of time. So I just wanted to remind you that while this is an amazing video to create awareness around the stress curve and how stress is related to productivity, I just wanted to remind you that you don't have to do it alone. If you are looking for help to go through burnout, if you're looking to understand more about burnout and dive deeper and have a more customized solution being presented to you rather than just a cut copy paste solution which doesn't necessarily work with burnout, let me tell you guys, which you guys are already aware of if you have been watching my videos. If you haven't been watching my videos, what have you guys been doing? Watch my videos. There is an amazing playlist that comes up at the end of every video. Check it out. But yeah, I mean, awareness is all fun and games unless, and it's exciting, right? You're aware about all these things that's happening inside of you, but it doesn't matter unless you act on it. And I want you guys to act on it. And I want you guys to know you're not alone in this. So if you're working on this, I invite you to be a part of my coaching program called Agni, where I take you through this amazing process. It's a 7-step coaching process called Freedom, where we take one step at a time and work on the intricate levels around your burnout and work on how you can possibly navigate it, overcome it, and prevent it in the future. If you guys want to do that, book a call down below. The link is in the description. I want you to check that out along with all the amazing resources that I have. And yeah, work on your burnout. I mean, I want you guys to succeed. You guys want yourself to succeed. So why are you stopping yourself? Anyways, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you actually enjoyed these whiteboard sessions, if I should do it more, or if I should kind of hit pause on this and work on this at a later point of time. Let me know if this excites you. If it does, comment whiteboard down in the comments below. And as always, like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Then bye bye. I hope you had fun.